Change is coming to the way you buy a new car. Hi there, I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English lesson number 353. JR is the producer, and he has posted the full lesson at plainenglish.com/353. We talked in lesson 311 about how buying a used car is so difficult, and in lesson 313 about the companies looking to improve the used car buying experience. Well, coming up today, it's another car lesson. Volvo announced that by 2030, it would be selling only electric cars and that it would make all its dealerships company-owned, doing away with the traditional dealership model. The two announcements may seem unrelated. How is selling electric cars related to the way sales take place? They seem like two different things, but they go hand in hand, as we'll see today. The expression is stay on top of, and JR has a song of the week. Swedish carmaker Volvo announced its entire fleet would be electric by the year 2030, and it would sell all of its cars online. That represents a tectonic shift in the way car makers sell cars to consumers, and it's being attributed to the Tesla effect. Tesla, of course, is the maker of luxury electric cars. Elon Musk's company has eschewed the dealership model entirely, selling its cars online and in its own stores directly to consumers. Volvo's vision for the future is that it will sell cars online, but maintain a smaller network of retail locations that serve as showrooms, very similar to how Tesla operates today. These dealerships of the future won't have large parking lots full of inventory. Instead, they'll have a small number of each model for consumers to look at and drive themselves. The car a consumer buys will come from the factory or from a regional inventory. Best of all, the actual transaction will be done online and directly with Volvo. No price haggling or dirty tricks at the dealership. This will be a boon for consumers, but it also promises to upend the dealership model that has served the new car industry almost since its inception. Electric vehicles were always going to shake up car dealerships' business models. Here's why. Dealerships make just a little money on the sale of a new car, but they hope to profit by selling expensive service after the sale. That's a problem with electric cars. A typical electric car has far fewer moving parts and requires far less maintenance than an internal combustion engine. Routine maintenance that we take for granted today will not be necessary. Oil changes will be a thing of the past. So will changing the oil filter. Electric cars don't have the complicated belts and chains of older engines. You'll never have to replace a spark plug in your future electric car. Even brakes will need less service. Electric cars use regenerative braking, capturing heat and energy from the braking process and extending the life of the traditional brakes that are installed. Most new car buyers in the US keep their cars for 5 years. If all those new cars go electric, then dealerships stand to lose an average of $1,300 per vehicle over a typical 5-year vehicle life. So the dealership model will have to change, and it's time. The new car buying industry is stuck in the past. You may think you buy a new car from Ford, Volkswagen, Toyota, or Volvo, but you really buy it from the dealership, and the dealership buys it from the manufacturer. For almost a century, this system worked for almost all parties involved. Car makers liked this system because they could sell cars to dealerships. They only had to keep thousands of dealerships happy instead of millions of consumers happy. Dealerships liked it because they could sell cars to consumers and then make their money on expensive service after the sale. What's more, most franchise agreements gave each dealership an exclusive territory so they didn't have to compete against anyone else selling the same vehicles in the same area. As hard as it is to believe today, this did even serve consumers in the past. In the early days of car ownership, consumers went to a dealership to learn about new models and even to learn about car ownership itself. Today, though, all that information is online, and a recent survey said only 15% of consumers trusted a car dealer to share honest information about new vehicles. The only surprising thing about that statistic is that it's so high. Recognizing this market failure, Volvo is seeking to take greater control over its brand and to forge a direct relationship with drivers of Volvo cars. Think of it as an extension of the direct-to-consumer trend we talked about in Lesson 237. In this new model, Volvo will have more control over the in-person experience and can respond more quickly to customers' needs. A more sophisticated car with sensors can alert the consumer and the car maker to potential problems. This may allow consumers to stay on top of maintenance and to make repairs before they cause a breakdown, which is how the aviation industry works. But, as ever, there are some risks to consumers. Electric cars may be less complicated mechanically, but all those additional sensors and electronics can feed information back to the car maker. It's not hard to imagine a car maker using that data to increase their own sales or develop their own self-driving technology. It's also not hard to imagine car makers merging with one another as they all scramble to amass greater amounts of consumer driving data. Not a moment too soon as far as I'm concerned. I bought a new car in 2016, and it was like being transported back to the 1980s. The kid, and he was a kid, who did the paperwork, filled in a piece of paper with a pen. Then he walked it over to someone who entered it into a computer. One computer for the whole dealership. They brought me back a printout from a dot matrix printer. It was like going to a history museum. This is how we used to buy things, kids. I joke, but overall, I had a good experience. I knew exactly what model I wanted, what features. I sent that list to probably 10 Mazda dealerships here in the Chicago area, and I chose the dealership that had the best price and was the most pleasant to deal with. They didn't have the exact model or color I wanted, so they sent someone to another dealership in another state to pick it up. So I must admit, although it was like being transported back in time, it was a pleasant experience, but only because I was armed with good information from the internet. Without price comparison shopping and online research, it would have been a much different story. At the end of lesson 313, I said I wished someone would come in and disrupt the new car buying experience. At the time, I did know that Tesla was doing things differently, but I always figured they would be the exception. I was waiting for a traditional car maker to step in and do it, and it looks like Volvo is doing it. So, there's really only one conclusion we can draw from all of this. People very, very high up in Volvo must be listening to Plain English. Today's expression is stay on top of. If your car is full of sensors, your car might be able to tell you when parts are about to break down or when you need service. This extra information will help consumers stay on top of maintenance, kind of like how airlines stay on top of maintaining their fleets of aircraft. It's important to stay on top of maintenance. If you don't change the oil, rotate the tires, check the brakes, replace the belts, and replace the filters, then you could run into problems on the road. If you stay on top of all that maintenance, though, you probably won't have many problems. By now, you might have guessed that to stay on top of your car's maintenance is to be continuously aware of it and to give it your regular attention. It doesn't mean that you're always only thinking about your car, although that may be the case for some of you, but it does mean that you don't ignore maintenance and that when something is needed, you pay attention and do what's necessary. Stay on top of is something you can use in many parts of your life. We all know people whose financial lives are a mess. They don't know how much they make. They don't know how much they spend. They don't seem to be making any progress in their financial lives. However, we also probably know people who stay on top of their finances. They track their spending, they have spending and savings goals, they are aware of their income and expenses, and pay frequent attention to it. They stay on top of their finances. Some of you, I know, stay on top of the financial markets. You track what's going on with stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, and such. Again, it doesn't mean this dominates your life, but you stay on top of the markets. You are generally aware of what's going on. You're looking for opportunities. You take action when it's appropriate. This is a good time to mention that we use stay on top of when there's some action required. For example, I'm watching a college basketball tournament as I write this. I'm watching, but I'm not taking any action. I'm just enjoying the games. But the reporters on television are staying on top of all the games. The reporters on TV need to be constantly aware of what's going on so they can report the news during halftime shows and during the games. They are staying on top of all the action. They're monitoring it and taking notes so they can report on it later. It's almost April 15th, a big day on the calendar in the U.S. That's when our taxes are due. If you're a tax accountant, here or elsewhere, you need to stay on top of changes to the tax code. If you're going to help clients file their taxes each year, you need to know about all the new tax rules each year, so you stay on top of developments in the tax code. We can use this for professionals in any industry. Fitness trainers will stay on top of the latest scientific research into physical fitness so they can give their clients the best possible advice. Web developers will stay on top of changes to major software platforms and tools at their disposal. A hotel general manager will stay on top of the latest health and safety rules, as well as trends in the travel industry post-COVID. In each case, the professionals are monitoring what's going on, staying informed, and taking action when necessary. Today's song of the week is called Blood by the Australian indie folk band The Middle East. The song is mellow and sad about loss and separation in a single family. Blood by the band The Middle East is the song of the week, and thanks to JR for selecting that. That's all for today. I just remembered as I was thinking of examples that I don't always stay on top of maintenance in my apartment. I'm supposed to change the filter on the furnace once a month. They say to do it on the 1st of every month, and I haven't done it since January. It's hard to stay on top of all these things, so I'm going to do that after I get done recording this lesson. One great way to stay on top of your English is to practice with us in Plain English Plus. Below each video lesson and expression, our Plus members are practicing what they're learning, writing their own examples, and staying on top of all the expressions they're learning. Our quizzes and exercises also help you stay on top of your English. You can work on pronunciation, listening, vocabulary, lots of stuff, lots of different ways to stay on top of your English as a member of Plain English Plus. Curious about that? Come check us out at plainenglish.com/plus. We'd love to have you as part of the membership.